Tfilat Shachar ad Chatzot. Rabbi Yehuda Omer ad Arba Shaot. Tfilat Mincha ad Ha'erev. Rabbi Yehuda Omer ad Plaga Mincha. Tfilat Ha'erev ein la keva. V'shel Musafim kol hayom. Rabbi Yehuda Omer ad Sheva Shaot. So we can see the topic of our Mishnah is the times of daily tefillas, Shacharit, Mincha, and Mariv, and at the end of the Mishnah, Musaf, which of course is recited on Shabbos, Yom Tov, and on Rosh Chodesh. The Tanna Kama of our Mishnah says you have until halfway through the day to daven Shacharis. Rabbi Yehuda says an earlier time, which is 4 hours into the day. Mincha, we have the same kind of disagreement. Tanna Kama says until the evening. Rashi says that means until Chashecha, until darkness, not sunset, but until darkness. And Rabbi Yehuda gives an earlier stopping time, which is Plag HaMincha. What is Plag HaMincha? Rashi says B'Gemara Mefarishla. Gemara is going to explain what Plag HaMincha is, but it's prior to the evening. On Tfilat HaErev, there's no disagreement. Ein la keva. Everyone holds it has no set time. Now, what does it mean to say that Tfilat HaErev has no set time? So Rashi says it means Kol Halayla Zmana. The entire evening, the entire night is its time. So there's no end time during the nighttime for Mariv until the next morning. And Musaf can be davened all day. That seems to mean until nightfall. And Rabbi Yehuda, in some editions of the Mishnah, says until 7 hours into the day. Let's take a look at a chart that summarizes these views. So here we have down the left-hand side, Shacharit, Mincha, Mariv, and Musaf. Across the top of the page, Tanna Kama and Rabbi Yehuda. On Mariv, there is no disagreement, and therefore the two columns are merged here in Mariv, but on Shacharit, Mincha, and of course in Musaf, at the end of our Mishnah, there is a disagreement between Tanna Kama and Rabbi Yehuda. Consistently, Tanna Kama is more lenient. In the case of Shacharit, he gives us until noon to daven, whereas Rabbi Yehuda gives us until 4 hours into the day, either the start or the end of the 4th hour. That's going to be a discussion in the Gemara as to what exactly Rabbi Yehuda means, but of course that's earlier than noon. Mincha is until dark, according to Tanna Kama, giving us a lot of leeway to daven Mincha, but Rabbi Yehuda says you have until half of the Mincha. This is sometime before dark. The exact parameters will be discussed by the Gemara. So in both cases, Shacharit and Mincha, Tanna Kama is more lenient, provides more time to say that particular prayer. When it comes to Musaf, the same pattern continues. Tanna Kama gives us all day until dark, whereas Rabbi Yehuda gives us until 7 hours into the day. Now, this system is based on a perfect 12-hour day from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., and then once again from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. for the evening hours until the morning. The Gemara starts with Raminu. A Raminu is going to indicate an apparent contradiction between two Tannaitic sources, and that's what it always means. So here we have our Mishnah, and we have a Braita quoted by the Gemara. And Kitan Yahahi is the other classic Gemara term that we've outlined here in yellow. Whenever we see Kitan Yahahi, it means Kasher Limdu Etze, when they taught it, or when they learnt it in reference to the particular case that is going to be cited by the Gemara. And that's a reconciliation of the apparent contradiction set up by the Raminu. Let's take a look at the Gemara. Raminu, mitzvata im hanetzachama, kadeshi smoch geula l'tfilah. Its mitzvah is until sunrise, so that the person davening will juxtapose the bracha of Ga'al Yisrael, that's called geula, to tfilah, to the Shemona Esrei. So we know the last bracha of Kriyat Shema in the morning is Baruch Atah Hashem Ga'al Yisrael, and that is supposed to lead right into Tefillah, V'nimtza mitpalel b'yom, so it turns out that you're davening at the first possible time during the day after sunrise. So the mitzvah is with Netzachama. What is this mitzvah? Rashi says, mitzvata shel Kriyat Shema. The time of the Shema is right before Netzachama, so that when you finish the last bracha in the Shema, Gal Yisrael, you'll go straight into the Shemona Esrei, and you'll be davening at the first possible opportunity during the day. Now this the Gemara thinks is contradictory, or apparently contradictory, to our Mishnah. The normal way of explaining this is that the Mishnah provides two end times for Tefillah, either Ad Chatzot for Tanna Kama, midday, or Rabbi Yehuda until 4 hours into the day. But Netzachama is hours before those two periods of time. So the apparent contradiction is that the Mishnah gives us a lot of leeway to daven Shacharit until mid-morning or the end of the morning, whereas the Breita gives us the first 5, 10, 15 minutes into the day to daven Shacharit. Which is it? Do we have this leeway as presented by the Mishnah, or do we have only up to 15 minutes or so after sunrise to daven Shacharit? Now, many commentators make a point of saying that this is not really a contradiction, because we could say that the topic of our Mishnah is the end time of Tfilat Shacharit, and the Breita's topic is the beginning time of Tfilat Shacharit, which is Netzach Hama. Why does there have to be a Raminu or contradiction between our Mishnah and the Breita? To answer this question, one of the commentaries takes us back to a Mishnah in the first parak of Brachot. The topic of the Mishnah on Daf Tet Amud Bet in Brachot is Me'ematai Koryan Tashma B'Shachrit. When do we start reciting the Shema in the morning? And there are two times here which we're not going to get into in this shiur. But the Mishnah continues and says, Ad HaNetzach Hama, until Netzach Hama. Sounds like that's the end time of Kriyat Shema. Rabbi Yeshua Omer, Ad Shalosh Shaot, until 3 hours into the day. Shekein Derech Malachim Lamod B'Shalosh Shaot, because that's the way of sons of kings, namely princes, to get up in the morning at 3 hours into the day. And that is called Uvkumecha, when you rise up, the standard set by B'nai Malachim, by princes. Now the halacha is like Rabbi Yoshua on this one, and that's the basis of our Gemara's understanding of the Breita in Tfilat HaShachar. As we pointed out before, Rashi explains that mitzvata means the mitzvah of Kriyat Shema is with Netzach Hama. Now whenever we have that term mitzvata, that does not mean that's an absolute obligation, but that it's a mitzvah. It's better to do it this way. It's ideal to do it in the following fashion. The commentaries understand that the Breita is going according to Rabbi Yoshua, who we saw moments ago, who says you really have until 3 hours into the day to recite the Shema. But mitzvata, the ideal performance of the mitzvah, is right before Netzach Hama. Kadeshi Smoch Gula Tfilah, so the last bracha of Gal Yisrael will move right into the Shmoneh Esrei. The question is, if the time for Shema extends until 3 hours into the day, what would make it a mitzvah to back up the Shema to right before Netzach Hama? What's the motivation to do that? If Uvkumecha, if the normative halacha is like Rabbi Yeshua, that Shema extends 3 hours into the day. Seemingly, it's the mitzvah of tefillah. It sounds like it's the imperative of tefillah to be recited in the first few minutes of the day that moves Kriyat Shema in its ideal form back to right before Netzach Hama, so that we can have the juxtaposition of Gula Tefillah. So it sounds like the time of tefillah is Ima Netzach Hama. That's the time of tefillah. That's when it must be recited. And that Kriyat Shema has to adjust accordingly. The time of tefillah, according to the Breita, is the few minutes after Netzach Hama. It's an absolute obligation. It's so powerful that it moved the performance of the Shema back to Netzach Hama, even though technically speaking, you have until 3 hours into the day to recite the Shema. The Gemara answers, Ki Tanya Hahi Levatiki. That Breita was taught in reference to the Vatikin. And now a support for that answer from a statement by the Amor Rabbi Yochanan. Dam Rabbi Yochanan, Vatikin hayu gomrim ota im ha-Netzach Hama. The Vatikin used to finish it with Netzach Hama. In other words, the mitzvah of Shema was performed by a group of people called the Vatikin right before Netzach Hama. Of what significance is that, and how does that help answer the Gemara's apparent contradiction between the Breita and the Mishnah? Rashi explains, Levatikin, hamaktimim lemitzvot. These people do mitzvot early. Umechazrim la'asot davar bizmano umitzvato. They pursue the opportunity of doing the action of the mitzvah in its time and at the proper time of its mitzvah. Maktimim lihit palel lachar hanetzach hama. Commentaries on the page take the word lihit palel and put it right over here instead of at the end of the line. So their davening is done early, right after Hanetzach Hama, right after sunrise. Okay, how does that help answer the question? when we were taught in our Mishnah that we have until Dalet Sha'ot or until Chatzot, that's for those who do it later. Shelo ye'acher yoter mechatzot. That's the deadline. Don't do it any later than halfway through the day, according to Tanna Kama and Dalet Sha'ot for Rabbi Yehuda. Shemisham ve'elach avar hazman. Comes from then on, the time has passed. You can no longer daven shacharis after Chatzot, according to Tanna Kama. But the standard of the Vatikin was never the subject of our Mishnah. That's the subject of this Breita. So once again, the Vatikin say the Shema right before dates and continue right after Gal Yisrael with the Shemona Esrei as a chumrah, as a stringency, because they generally pursue the opportunity to do mitzvot at their earliest possible time. Says the Gemara, V'kule almad chatzot v'tulo. Are we saying that all opinions hold that the latest possible time to daven shacharit is chatzot? V'tulo means v'shuvlo, and no more. It's a rhetorical question. Is it true that everyone holds until chatzot as the latest time and no later than that? V'hamar Rav Meri Berei de Rav Huna, Berei de Rav Yirmiyah, Bar Abba, Am Rabbi Yochanan. Didn't Rav Meri, the son of Rav Huna, who was the son of Rabbi Yirmiyah, Bar Abba, say in the name of Rabbi Yochanan the following? Now that's going to be a kushya, a difficulty, because since the question leading into it is a rhetorical question, and the rhetorical question was, are you telling me that Chatzot is the absolute latest time to daven? This must be that the quote we're about to see suggests that there's an opportunity to daven shacharit even later than Chatzot. What did Rabbi Yochanan say? Ta'ava lo hitpalel arvit mipalel b'shacharit shtayim. Somebody who made a mistake and didn't daven mariv can say shacharit twice. 2 tefillot, 2 shmona esreis at shacharit. Shacharit, if he failed to daven shacharit by mistake, mitpalel b'mincha shtayim, can say mincha twice. So we see from this, says the Gemara, kule yoma matzli v'azil. Matzle in Aramaic is mitpalel. So kol hayom, he can go ahead and daven. Azil means go. So the entire day, you see, he can daven. He can daven shacharit even in the afternoon. So how can we have a Mishnah that says Dalet Sha'ot or Chatzot? The real question really is on Rabbi Yochanan, because Rabbi Yochanan was an Amora. So how did Rabbi Yochanan understand the Mishnah? Such that Rabbi Yochanan said there was an opportunity to make up a missed tefillah in the next tefillah. Answers the Gemara. Ad Chatzot, yihivle schar tefillah bizmana. Until Chatzot, a person is given the merit of tefillah in its proper time. Mikan ve'elach, from then onwards, schar tefillah yihivle, he has the merit of tefillah, but schar tefillah bizmana lo yihivle. He will not get the merit of somebody who prayed at the proper time. So in other words, it's a two-tiered system. The Mishnah is talking about the normative times of tefillah, and the quote of Rabbi Yochanan is talking about what we call tefillah tashlumin, making up a tefillah but not getting the same level of schar or merit as somebody who performs the tefillah in its proper time, either ad dalet sha'ot for Rabbi Yehuda or ad chatzot for the Tanna Kama. So it turns out that this sugya raised two opposite questions. Initially, the Gemara suggested that the time for davening shacharit was very early, right after Netzachama. That was dismissed as being a custom of the Vatikin. And then the Gemara suggested, hey, the mitzvah of tefillah extends throughout the afternoon. And that was dismissed as a normative practice and relegated to the din of tefillah tashlumin, where there is less sachar, less merit for a compensatory prayer.